The scourge of abortion has inflicted a heavy toll on our nation. In the span of 4+ decades, it has killed 61 million unborn babies. The most viable option to ending legal abortion is for the U.S. Supreme Court to partially or fully reverse Roe v. Wade that allowed abortion on demand throughout pregnancy. Today, my guests will share why the Supreme Court is absolutely essential to ending abortion. You'll hear from those in the thick of the battle who are working to save lives. Welcome. I'm Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute. Please stay with us. Marjorie Dannenfelser is the president of Susan B. Anthony List and an avid national spokesperson for the pro-life message. Marjorie has been widely published in national media and is the recent author of the book Life is Winning, with an introduction by Vice President Mike Pence. She also serves on the board of Alliance Defending Freedom and was appointed to the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission by Senate Majority Leader McConnell. Marjorie, what in your life has really impacted your opinion and your activity to end abortion?
My personal connection to abortion is very central to who I am. I went from being profoundly pro-choice to profoundly pro-life. I fought the idea that I should be involved in the center of changing this in the country. Why? Because I thought other things might be more gentle on my spirit. There is no question that God works through his people that were not only committed and convicted intellectually and spiritually to the pro-life issue, but also because of who they were, how they were with me. They opened the doors of my heart. In the end, I think what they said wasn't even as important as how they approached me. Their kindness, the fact that I respected them, made me question a fundamental premise that I had in my head. And that was, this is my body, this is my choice. You have nothing to say about what goes on in my life, so you can just back off. That was the extent of the intellectual argument that I had. Didn't go very far. It was basically a stop talking now argument, which doesn't really last if you really have that question mark over your head and in your heart. When I allowed those conversations, a question mark really formed in my head and my heart over what is this thing that we're talking about? What is an abortion? What is the object of that act? And the object of that act is human, undeniably. It came down to a question of, if there is a possibility that this is a human being, like us just sitting here right now, and you walk into a dark room with a loaded gun, are you willing to spray bullets in there if you think that maybe there's a human being in that room? Of course, none of us would do that. There are citizens and legislators and governors in so many states hungry to pass laws that will protect children. All they need is the green light for the Supreme Court, who decides to allow states to do that again and to stop being a super legislature.
Bob McEwen is the executive director of the Council for National Policy, popularly known as CNP. Bob represented Ohio during 6 terms as a member of the United States Congress and is a walking encyclopedia on all things America. He continues to shape national thinking in his role as a busy international speaker. Bob, can you give us a brief summary, a little history of the role of the Supreme Court as it relates to other branches of government?
Well, the purpose of government was designed that people would have a voice. That would be number 1, Article 1, the Constitution. There would be a House of Representatives and a Senate, and they would represent the people. But then there had to be someone to watch over them and to implement it, and that would be the President, Article 2 of the Constitution. And then there was an Article 3, and that is that rather than having politicians decide things, there would be people that would look solely to the law, solely to the Constitution, to make sure that nothing that was done by the other two would be outside the Constitution. That's Article 3 of the judiciary. And the purpose of the judiciary was to make sure that no one went astray. The purpose of the United States government is, number 1, to preserve life. Secondly, to preserve liberty. Now notice the sequence. See, liberty is of precious little value if you're dead. So you have to have life first, then liberty, then sewer systems and overpasses, but the first thing you do is life. And any person running for any public office that's not dedicated to protecting life, just put this in the bank. Any politician that will take innocent life will not hesitate to take your liberty.
You've just demonstrated why I have you in this chair. The vacancy left on the Supreme Court by Ruth Bader Ginsburg highlights the critical role Americans play in securing a new justice who would rule in defense of the unborn. Marjorie, why do you feel the Supreme Court is so important to our country?
Well, I think everyone knows at this particular moment, Brad, that we're at a time of choosing. And to connect the dots, there is definitely a time of choosing for voters, there's a time of choosing for the Senate and the President, and there'll be a time of choosing for the Supreme Court. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is there are many profound choices coming our way. And without the cooperation of the Supreme Court, the choice for life can't be made. In other words, unless this Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, the law of the land will continue to be abortion on demand up until birth. Every once in a while, we get something around the edges that is helpful and perhaps helps other people who are making the decisions surrounding abortion.
Katrina Jackson is a Democrat state senator from Louisiana. Her strong spiritual beliefs guide her decisions in both her professional and personal life. Senator Jackson is known as a tough negotiator and has consistently been on the front line as an advocate for pro-life issues. Because of the pandemic, our interview was facilitated via technology due to her daily interaction with a high-risk family member. Senator, could you briefly describe or explain what your law would have done had it been held constitutional by the Supreme Court?
It would protect women. Just simply put, in the state of Louisiana, my law said that physicians performing abortions would have to have admitting privileges to a local hospital within a 30-mile radius. It would have provided women with a continuity of care when they had complications during the procedure. That's really important in Louisiana because in Louisiana, for years we've had the ambulatory surgical center law. That means that any other procedure that's done in an outpatient clinic that's not connected to a hospital, that physician has to have admitting privileges. If they're in an ambulatory surgical center, which is quite similar to an abortion clinic. And my law would have put abortion clinics in line with that.
You definitely went on the radar of the American public when this law made its way up to the Supreme Court. What's it been like being in the limelight on such a controversial issue?
So my experience ranged from a lot of people being upset to a lot of people being very happy. And when I say a lot of people, I even mean Democrats that said, listen, I'm glad you're giving us a voice at the table and you are letting America know that there are pro-life Democrats and that this is not a party issue. Now, I had a death threat once. And of course, we had to deal with that. And I'm always concerned about my staff when things like that happen. So it has not been all beautiful, but I will say that it's been worth it because of the babies that are being saved, because this is coming to the forefront.
You and some of the state officials made an excellent case before the Supreme Court regarding the health dangers for women going into abortion facilities there in Louisiana. Were you surprised by the Supreme Court's ruling?
When the call came through that the Supreme Court had ruled against women's health in our state, it was an extremely disappointing and surprising experience. I was even more surprised when I was able to get over to the Capitol and be briefed on the Supreme Court decision and find out that Justice Roberts, who had sided with the Texas law, sided with those who opposed my law.
There are those in the political realm, Senator, that feel that women, blacks, and Democrats should always support abortion. What message do you have for them?
What I told someone in a group of people when they asked me that once is this: well, I don't understand what you're asking me, because when you ask me as a woman to support choice, you're asking me to say that someone had a choice on whether or not your life mattered. As far as an African American, I'm insulted. I'm insulted because what we've known for years as advocates, The nation somewhat found out, although I think mainstream media put it up once and ignored it, that Margaret Sanger, one of the founders of Planned Parenthood, was for eugenics, which means that she believed that who she considered to be undesirable should abort. One of those class of people was African Americans. So when you really realize that the largest provider of abortions in the United States was truly formed and founded to make sure African Americans didn't reproduce, and then you tell me that as an African American I should support abortion, and in our African American community, abortion has become modern day genocide. Because of abortion, we are now the minority of the minority, and more African American babies die in the womb each year from abortion than any other sickness, illness, disease, murder, or crime combined. And I want to hit right there as an African American, because what people need to understand is that more African Americans die every year from abortion than anything else combined. If you took murder, if you took heart disease, if you took diabetes, if you took anything else, leukemia, if you took sickle cell, and you lumped it all into one and said, this is the amount of African Americans that died this year, and you took out abortion, the number of African Americans that died from abortion would be higher than all of the other things combined. As a Democrat, I would tell people that party does not denote your social values. It doesn't. Party is only an affiliation based on some common grounds you have. But party shouldn't denote your social values, and it's okay to be a whole life Democrat. 33+% of us are more a whole life Democrats in this party. And that comes from the elected officials down to the voters that are registered as Democrats, okay? And so it's a misnomer to think that when you join the Democratic Party, you have to be pro-abortion.
Bob, what do you make of Chief Justice John Roberts' comments and vote in the Louisiana case, where he made such a big deal about precedents and even voted contrary to a previous ruling just 4 years before?
Well, there's a principle called stare decisis, and that is that when the court has spoken, that you should stay within these parameters. And so it means that when a higher court makes a decision, that lower courts can't be making up the case, and it provides for stability. However, in recent years, people say, what does stare decisis mean? I said, that's Latin for, I promised never to read the Constitution. Because these people, stare decisis, make some crazy decision, and they say, well, we can't go back and change that because we have to go by precedent. So when the Chief Justice said, well, even though I felt otherwise, for the principle of stare decisis, I'm going to continue in this wrong direction, that's where we get back to the integrity and principle. That is, what does a person believe in the first place? Does he believe what man says, or does he believe what God says? And our founders nailed it down in our Constitution, and the loyalty is first to God and the Constitution, and thirdly to precedent.
Have many other countries gone as far as we have in permitting abortion throughout pregnancy?
The irony is, other countries have gone as far as we have in that extreme approach to abortion, and they're not countries that you want to be in the Human Rights Club with. They're North Korea, Vietnam, China, and a handful of others. There are only 7 nations that are that extreme on abortion, and the United States of America, founded on documents that protect life, takes the lead in failing our children from conception until birth. I think that anyone voting now, or anyone who is concerned at all about abortion law in this nation, is going through a civics lesson that perhaps hasn't occurred in many, many decades since Roe versus Wade. Every voter that we have conversations with now understands the connection between the voter, the president, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, and all federal judges. They know that there is a direct connection between their action to what happens on the Supreme Court. That, I think, is vitally important. And that is a civics lesson that we have lived in the last 2 elections.
Well, I think the general public needs to first be aware that the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. That when you're appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate, it transcends that presidential term in office, that you have a lifetime appointment. It's very important to be engaged with your president and your U.S. senator regarding these Supreme Court confirmations.
Filling the vacancy left by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg with a pro-life jurist is absolutely critical. It's a role pro-life Americans can and should participate in. Do you have a message for the average American watching this program or listening to the radio version of this program regarding that point? Is there anything they can do to play a part in the Supreme Court's ultimate decision?
There is something they can do. Your elected members of the Senate, every time a Supreme Court appointment is made, have to confirm that person. You can take an active participation and lobbying and advocating your senator to either confirm or deny an appointment of any Supreme Court justice that comes before them. They have hearings. They are recorded. Even if you work during the day, you can go back and watch them. But your senator needs to hear from you on every Supreme Court appointment that comes, and it does not come that often. So it's not an onerous thing that you would have to do yearly. It doesn't even come yearly. But when you hear that a Supreme Court justice has been appointed and is before the Senate on confirmation, your participation comes through your U.S. senator. There are 2 for every state. So for everyone that we are speaking to and we're talking about, you only have 2 people you need to contact to weigh in on. And it is one of the biggest decisions that a U.S. senator will make. And you need to be a part of it, and they need to hear from you. What I heard throughout my district as I ran, my district was pro-life, and they wanted to make sure that I was a pro-life senator and representative. Your U.S. senators need to understand that at the time that they confirm a justice or make a decision on whether or not to confirm a justice to the Supreme Court, that is going to weigh on whether or not you support them in their re-election. And that if they don't stand to appoint someone who's going to rule in a direction that supports life, that you will remember them at their time of their election.
How important are the appellate and district courts to America and the abortion issue?
So appellate and district courts are very, very important. They are the threshold courts. You can't get anywhere without going through those if you're legislation. Appellate and district courts decide thousands of cases, whereas the Supreme Court handles 100. You can't get to the Supreme Court without going through those intermediate courts. They are vital. So placing judges there is critically important. This president has nominated and the Senate has confirmed a quarter of the entire federal bench. So 2 Supreme Court justices and all the rest. So there are no vacancies for the first time in many, many, many years in those appellate and district courts.
And what would you have the average citizen do to impact where the Supreme Court takes the abortion issue and respect for life?
It's a very good question. It's what the individual can do. He can say to his politicians, where do you stand? What is your standard? Do you believe what our founding documents say, or do you have a whim that you have to answer politically? If you don't protect life, everything else is immaterial. So you can ask any candidate for office. I ask any employee, where do you stand on life? Because it tells you everything of their value system. That will tell you how they view the purpose of the United States government, and our founders overwhelmingly believed, and they believed in the uniqueness of the individual.
Do you believe that we're close to ending abortion in America? And if so, what do you think will carry the babies and their mothers across the finish line?
We are a hair's breadth away from overturning Roe versus Wade and restoring life at the center of America. We are so close, and the complete power is in the hands of the voter. Because in every battleground state that determines whether the president or the Senate wins, there are a handful of voters that will determine that result. In a handful of cases, there will be judges that will make decisions that will impact whether the Supreme Court will examine Roe versus Wade. And on the Supreme Court, we are so close, 1, maybe 2 judges away from overturning Roe versus Wade and restoring life in America. It's close on every single level, and the power is in the hands of everyone who votes. When human rights warriors and heroes and civil rights activists start to bring our nation out of that valley of darkness, they bring our nation out of the valley of darkness in more than one way. To see the light on why it is important to protect the unborn child is to see the light in many other ways. We'll continue to be a country that ignores the promises of the founding documents, or we'll be a country that honors life and leads the rest of the world in that direction.
What's your message, Senator, to those who were discouraged by the court's decision?
Oh, what's my message? The same message I lean on, that you don't grow weary in well-doing, because in due season, if you faint not, you shall reap. That you have to remain strong, that sometimes you'll lose a battle and it'll be a seemingly defeat, but the big thing is to win the war against abortion. And so there are going to be up and downs throughout the process, and some days you're going to feel defeated. But remember that it's just a feeling, because you're only defeated when you stop fighting. And so even though we're disappointed and discouraged, that's momentary. Our jobs is to wake up the next day and still fight. If we get an opportunity the next minute after a decision like that, you still fight. You never stop fighting for what you believe in. If you look at those whose lives were meant to be lived, that if we base them on choice, we would have lost out on so many great contributions to this United States of America. And we wouldn't be who we are without them. And so in advocating for life, we advocate for things that have yet to come, like the cure for cancer. Pastor Janet Floyd wrote this poem for me once, and she said that the answer to any question that's ailing America comes through the womb of a woman. And so we're screaming out for a cure for cancer, and who knows if we have aborted that cure and yet waiting on God to produce it through another man and woman in the womb right now. We're screaming for a cure for HIV and other diseases that ail us, but it will only come through the womb of a woman. And so if we are to be great, if we are to be what we really want to be, that means everyone's life has to matter, and that everyone in the womb must come to experience what God has for them. And we're all depending on those babies to be born, because they're answers to things we're crying out for. And this is the funny thing about it. You do not get to choose who that answer comes through. But America does get to choose to make life a key issue and important. And I ask you to join me in that.
We've learned from my guests today that the U.S. Supreme Court is absolutely vital to using pro-life legislation to end legal abortion. When the court is in session, lives literally hang in the balance. We're enticingly close, but there's still crucial work that needs to be done. And it depends upon each and every one of us to do all we can, utilizing the democratic process. Imagine an America without the daily killing of thousands of unborn children by abortion. Join the battle. We can do this. Thanks for watching.